Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday. We are already in the month of July, which means we are about 1 month, I think, right now from the Hall of Fame game, which usually kicks off that first weekend there in August. Preseason right around the corner.
So if we're 1 month from the Hall of Fame game, that means we're 5 weeks from the Fantasy Football Expo?
Yeah, there you go. Not too long away.
So now with your new job, maybe not this year, but next year you might actually be able to attend.
That's true. I didn't think about going for this year. That is actually the first couple days of school.
F them kids.
But, you had a chance over the weekend to do your live draft for Scott Fishbowl. You teased that out on Friday. How did you feel about how your team ended up?
It's one of my most interacted with tweets. I posted my first 10 picks, and, I did not do what the kids call research. And so I thought, well, I am going to rely on people who my dance card is full, man. I have been busting my butt trying to keep up. We do this show twice a week, editing for Dynasty Nerds. I got one kid in baseball, one kid in a band that's on tour, trying to book a tour. I got a wife and a full-time job that's been going through an audit and had consultants in. So, life's been getting the better part of me. So I said, hey, I am going to lean on my guys over at Going for Two, because I know they do a lot of work on the Scott Fish Bowl. And so I went over. I'm part of their Discord. Shout it out. If you can get in there. Lots of activity. Them and the Dynasty Nerds Discord, two of the most spectacular fantasy communities out there. But I went in and was like, let me go see what tools. And they put together one of their spreadsheets, compared scoring for PPR, last year's Scott Fish Bowl, and this year's Scott Fish Bowl if they had played last year. So 3 sets of projections, 3 different scorings, so you could see. And then they had a set of projections as well. And so I'm like, I'm going to nab these tools and I'm going to use them. I put together a board. I'm following my board, and I'm not paying terrific attention. I'm looking, I'm going, like, based on this board, I've got who are the guys, who's the best player available. And I'm targeting different positions. I started off, I went, let's see. I had the 101. I went Josh Allen, 212. I went Jonathan Taylor. This scoring seems to really favor bell cow running backs. And you have you only have to start 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 5 flexes. So it's like, I'm going to go with a bell cow back. When quarterbacks went fast, I ended up going Jaden Daniels in the 3rd round, because 3rd round reversal. So it was the 312. And the scoring de-emphasizes passing yards. Like most leagues, it's 4 points per 100 yards. This is 2 points per 100 yards. So I went ahead and I went with running quarterbacks in Allen and Jaden Daniels. And then I went, Joe Mixon. So I wanted to have a bell cow backup. I'm high on Mixon this year. He seems built for the Texans offense. But I found myself, what was it? Oh, it was about the 8th round when I looked up and realized that my round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, and round 7 picks all had the same bye week.
Oops.
So I had 6 straight, not only oops, but it's week 14, so it's during the playoffs, like the second round of the playoffs. So I have 6 straight picks with the same bye week. My son was playing a baseball game, and I'm watching the tracker for that. How's he do? They got killed, by the way. My other son his band has a tour coming up, starting July 30th, and I'm helping him book shows. We got like one date he's got a 12-day tour, 11 shows in 12 days. We've got one date that's still open, and I'm doing that. And I was like, gosh, dang it. And, the funnier part was as I'm sitting there and I'm drafting about the 7th round, 6th round, this guy's behind me, and he goes, hey, you're using my sheet. He's one of Jeff Lambert's over at Going for Twos guys. I had the 101. He had the 102. And I was picking with a sheet based off of his work.
Nice.
It was spectacular. So aside from, basically since the, 8th round, I have been trying to get guys that I hope can score me a lot of points in week 14.
I was just looking. I mean, 6 teams on a bye that week. It's going to be. And
so the guys I have on a bye in week 14, Jonathan Taylor, Jaden Daniels, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Michael Pittman, and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, 6 teams, Colts, Commanders among them, Texans, Ravens, and then you probably don't have a ton of Patriots and Broncos you're worried about, but not helpful.
Yeah, it's I'm hoping, because I think Scott does some scoring in the fishbowl where it's like you have a certain amount of you get your weekly average plus your score or something, and that's how you advance. And so my hope is that my weekly average with these studs is going to be high enough that when added to guys like Lad McConkey and Cole Kmet and Trey Benson and Gabe Davis and Curtis Samuel and Aiden O'Connell, I still make it through week 14.
Well, keep hope alive. There is no real news going on in the NFL, but this week there was a lot of banter about something the league is looking at potentially introducing when they go to the next collective bargaining agreement, and that is an 18-game schedule. We've heard a lot of this talk before. Some of the highlights are they suspect if it is an 18-game schedule, big questions about how many preseason games there would be, if there would be any. But looking to start on Labor Day weekend, which could be an interesting bump for college football, which has had that prime holiday football weekend to themselves for quite a while. Possibility of 2 bye weeks for each team, which means bye-mageddon's being even more savage.
Oh, no. Well, dang. Looks like Matt clicked himself out of the stream. I'm not sure what's going on there. He has vanished.
There we
Hey,
go.
welcome back,
I don't know.
Houdini.
All of a sudden, my Chrome just quit and said Chrome error. It didn't like the idea of an 18-game schedule.
Clearly.
But so, Dennis, I bring this up. What do you think this does for fantasy? Obviously, you have to navigate a couple of bye weeks. Potentially means the fantasy regular season could be longer. I'm assuming, season could end up being about 20 weeks because if they add another bye for every team, will they add 1 week? Will they add 2 weeks? Right now, it's 18 weeks to get 17 games. Will it be 19 weeks to get 18 games, or will it be 20 weeks to get 18 games?
So the NFL has definitely managed to become a 365 day a week sport or year sport. Damn it, that would have sounded so cool if I didn't blow that week instead of year. Anyways, they've become a year-round.
Sometimes a week does feel like a year. So
ain't that the truth? But the NFL has become a 365 day a year enterprise, and they're not just introducing this. They have been talking about this for a couple years, and they are basically, using one of the oldest negotiation tactics out there. You float the balloon out, see what happens, start to see where people poke holes in it so you can shore up your defense of your proposal. And so they've been doing that now for what, 2 years?
Yeah.
Talking about it.
They were kind of talking about it when they adopted the 17 games.
Correct. And the players have been anti that. Well, I think ultimately what happens is the players have a number, and they're going to get, they get a big piece of the pie, and they're going to want a bigger piece of the pie. Football is a super physical sport. Careers are shorter. Going to 18 games in a 20-week season, whether you do no preseason or not, I think is irrelevant. Very few players that truly matter play a lot in the preseason as it is. And we see the outcome of that in the first 2 or 3 weeks of sloppy football. And so I think what happens is they get a bigger piece of the pie. They create more jobs by expanding the rosters, the active rosters, the taxi squads. Who it really hurts is the UFL. Players will fight against it, but if they add, 10 more roster spots to accommodate this, well, that's another 320 players.
Yeah,
that wipes out the UFL. That wipes out some CFL players. And let's face it, none of those leagues pay like the NFL does. So we'll take a look at it from a fantasy perspective. I could see it creating more 2-week playoff scenarios. So you still have a 13 or 14-week regular season, but now you have a 2-week playoffs to hedge against players sitting or being sat as they get ready for the playoffs.
Or bye weeks.
It'll be fun for fantasy because it gives us a new obstacle to navigate while we're out there trying to win the chip. Is it good or bad? I don't know. It's a physical sport, and you can make a lot of arguments about, this is dangerous or that is dangerous, playing on this day or that day, or playing X number of games. All those things are true because you're playing a violent sport. So you take the risk of injury, and the outcome is a lot of people get injured and a lot of people don't.
Well, let's continue our preview series. We are starting this week with the AFC North, and that means the winners last year, the Baltimore Ravens, who finished 13-4, first in the AFC North, lost in the AFC Championship game to the Kansas City Chiefs. Among their departures, quarterback Tyler Huntley, Running backs, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Wide receiver, Odell Beckham Jr. and Devin Duvernay. Defensive end, Jadeveon Clowney. And linebacker, Patrick Queen. Among their additions, they brought in running back Derrick Henry from the Titans, and they added wide receiver Deontay Hardy. Draft picks, they grabbed a corner in Nate Wiggins, a linebacker in Adisa Isaac, and a wide receiver in Devontae Walker. Fantasy finishes from 2023. Lamar Jackson played the whole season, new contract and all. Was QB4. I believe finished as the regular season MVP. Gus Edwards was the primary back, finished as RB25. Justice Hill was RB44. Keaton Mitchell, RB59, did get injured at the end of last year. Derrick Henry, for comparison, was running back 8 with the Titans. Among receivers, Zay Flowers was wide receiver 30. Odell Beckham was wide receiver 63. Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver 71. And Rashad Bateman, who surprised a lot of us and got a new contract, was wide receiver 85. They are expecting him to take something of a step up this year. Mark Andrews was tight end 15, injured, missed some time. Isaiah Likely finished as tight end 25, filled in very well. Dennis, they didn't do much to a wide receiver room that still had a lot of questions last year. They bring in a kind of marquee running back that will probably displace some of the running back by committee they've had the last few years. And Mark Andrews is still there. So what are you expecting from the Ravens in fantasy?
I was baffled by the contract extension for Rashad Bateman. But also, I guess, if they've seen him, they know the work he's doing. He's had a couple bad breaks with injuries and just hasn't been quite able to get it going. I think the team is going to run a lot behind Derrick Henry. I think Lamar Jackson will still run some, but that's going to get reduced. Zay Flowers performed really well, and you've still got Mark Andrews. As fantasy assets go, this may be the year to bet on Lamar in the passing game. I know Derek's going to run it a lot, and Lamar will still run it, but I think that opens up opportunities for them to throw a little bit more. And they like Zay Flowers. They like Rashad Bateman. Bateman's a bigger guy, so maybe they signed him for his blocking prowess. Isaiah Likely, I don't know that he's somebody that I'm going to invest in any more than as a handcuff. I like the talent of Likely, but as long as Andrews is there, Likely's going to be playing behind him when he's healthy. To me, there's not a lot of meat left on the bone for the backup running backs. I think the running game is going to be Derrick Henry, and it's going to be Lamar. That offensive line can block. If it should happen to fall apart, they spent a second-round draft pick on a right tackle. Ronnie Stanley has had some injuries over the last few years. Linderbaum is coming on at center. He was a first-round pick. So they've got some players up front. It'll just come down to whether or not they can stay healthy. If I'm betting on Lamar as a passer, it's because I think his touchdowns are going to go up. We've seen him win an MVP throwing 36 touchdowns and being in the bottom, 5 or 6 in pass attempts in the league while doing so. So we know he can have an effective and efficient passing game. I would expect more of that this year. I am a little bit nervous. If I'm going to bet on that, I'm going to do it as a portfolio manager. If I've got 1 or 2 teams this year, I'd be a little bit nervous about betting on Lamar. But, I mean, it is Lamar Jackson, and dude's a good football player.
Yeah, I think they'll be decent. Derrick Henry, I liked that move. They've been a power running team in the past. I can see them wanting to do that power running team again. I think it'll be a good move for him. Andrews would be a tight end one for me. I don't know. There's been some good influx of tight end talent, so he might not be in top 3, but he's certainly in that top, 5 to 8 range for me. Wide receiver is more of a question. They seem real bullish that Rashad Bateman's going to step up. I've kept him on a couple of rosters, but it's not a guy I'm counting on. I think in the passing game for me, it's basically Andrews and Zay Flowers. And Flowers was wide receiver 30 last year. High end wide receiver 3, maybe low end wide receiver 2 is about my expectation there.
Yeah, I agree. I apologize for all the sirens. It seems like something's going on. We're kind of.
I was wondering if you murdered somebody and they were coming for you.
Yeah, I put up a still picture of myself and did the deed. I'm the hard for me. It's like, where do I invest in tertiary parts? Do I like, because we saw Keaton Mitchell look great last year in that, Devin Achane kind of role. Justice Hill is listed on our lads as their second string running back. But I think if I want to take a shot on somebody cheap, I'm going to be going for Mitchell.
But Mitchell probably not available until November at the earliest because of where he got injured and all the comments they've made about him. So that's kind of a stash for this year. For Dynasty, I get if you thought he was going to have more of a future, because I think Hill's on a contract here. But for 2024 itself, I think that's going to be tough to bear a lot of fruit.
Yeah, I think that it's a narrow funnel for the Ravens. So I'm very comfortable with Henry, with Andrews and Lamar. It gets a little dicey as soon as you get to wide receiver. I think Zay Flowers is probably a high-end wide receiver 3.
Do you think the presence of Derrick Henry caps some of Lamar's rushing upside?
I think so, and not because he can't do it, but because they won't do it. They'll back off. They're looking at Lamar, who's 29 years old now, and you can't just keep. I get it. He's 6'3" and 6'2" and 225 pounds.
He's only 27.
Okay, but you can't keep slamming him into the line. Yeah. He does a great job avoiding hits. He runs out of bounds. He's still fast, but it's not like he was 3, 4, 5 years ago. That those hits do take a toll. So I think it's a not salvage. That's not the word I want, but I think it's having Henry becomes a safety measure.
Yeah.
It may open some stuff up because people key on Henry. So there may be more big plays from Lamar as opposed to, 6-7 yarders. But I don't think there'll be. I think his carries will be down.
Yeah. Where do you have the Ravens finishing? I put them at around 11 wins, making it into the playoffs, but I did not have them repeating as division winner.
So I'm still fleshing out the Bengals and Steelers, but I have the Ravens tied for first at 10-7. So unless the Bengals win 11 games in my thing here, which I should have done by the end of the show, they're likely to finish second because as they sit right now, they have the tiebreaker on the Browns. So they're either going to be first or they're going to be second probably because I don't think the Steelers are going to be an 11-win team.
No, but I will say the AFC North is one division where I had all 4 teams finishing above 500.
Yeah, I
which
could
means
see that.
You don't have any runaway teams usually, but that was actually the case last year. 4th place team was 9-8, the Cincinnati Bengals. So We've seen it happen recently. Well, let's move on to those Browns. They finished second last year, 11-6 in the regular season, lost in the wild card to the Texans. Among their key departures, quarterback Joe Flacco went to the Colts. Harrison Bryant, the tight end, went to the Raiders. Anthony Walker, a linebacker, also left. The additions, they brought in Jameis Winston at quarterback, Tyler Huntley at quarterback, giving them some veteran depth behind Deshaun Watson. They brought in Deonta Foreman and Nyheim Hines at running back. They traded for Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver. They added Jordan Hicks and Devin Bush at linebacker. In the draft, they grabbed a defensive tackle in Michael Hall. They grabbed a guard in Zach Sinter, and later round they grabbed Jamari Thrash, a wide receiver. Fantasy finishes: Joe Flacco, really hot stretch to end the season, get them in the playoffs, finished as QB 32. Deshaun Watson only played 6 games, finished as QB 35. Jerome Ford carried most of the load in the backfield, finishing as running back 16 after Nick Chubb was injured in the second game. He finished as running back 87. Kareem Hunt was backfield mate last year, is currently a free agent, was running back 41 last year. Deonta Foreman was running back 51, where he was in Chicago. Amari Cooper was wide receiver 20 last year. Elijah Moore, who came over from the Jets, finished as wide receiver 54. Jerry Jeudy was wide receiver 50 in Denver. David Njoku finished as tight end 6. Dennis, 2 years into the Deshaun Watson experience, we've gotten 12 total games, 6 in each of the seasons. Last year, they had a phenomenal defense, but that offense was held together with spitballs and twigs until we got Flacco in there kind of to end the season and really pick things up. Do you have high hopes for Deshaun Watson?
Man, I want to have high hopes for Deshaun Watson. As a Browns fan, I really do. But, you know, in the 12 games he's played, he hasn't looked great, Bob. And it's I struggle to think, you know, I can't wrap my mind around, like, how could he be so good and then be so bad when he hasn't taken a beating over the last 4 years? And so it's like, I'm not sure.
He hasn't taken a beating on the football field anyway.
Right. It's so, but I think, you know, when Tiger Woods was discovered being a freak, you know, his game went to hell as well. And, you know, I just don't know if there's something in the mind that is like, now I'm not my true self anymore because I have to behave in a more respectable manner all the time. It's really, really weird. I think, you know, one of the biggest things that I remember from Watson when he came out of college was that he didn't have a lot of velocity on his ball. He was like, when they go through all their measurements, one of the things that they looked is like his velocity was like right on the bottom number. That they're like, oh, this is what it has to be if you're going to be successful in the NFL. It has to be, I think it was like a 58 or 57, and that's what his velocity was on his ball. So, and what that means is, like, when he throws deep, he's got to arc it more, put more air under it, and it ends up being an opportunity. You know, when you have to do things like that with the ball, you either A, stop throwing deep, or you become susceptible to interceptions because the ball floats on you. Well, you have Nick Chubb, and he's able to hide a lot of those things because he's such a good runner. And now Chubb's coming off a devastating injury, and I think he'll be okay. It's with Chubb, it's like, you know, my youngest son likes to do the old, well, I'm just built different. And I chuckle because, you know, he's not. He's like Charmin soft. But Nick Chubb is built different. And he may very well come back like Adrian Peterson did after his ACL injury and rush for 2,000 yards. I think the biggest challenge I've had with Nick Chubb as a player for fantasy is that the Browns don't use him enough. If they get a lead, they sit him. They put somebody else. It's like, no, give this guy the ball. He's so dynamic. He's going to score so many points. So Can the running game, while Chubb comes back, really perform? Jerome Ford performed admirably. I don't think he's more than, he's Chuba Hubbard. He's Dante Foreman, who is in Cleveland now too. He's just a guy. He's not gonna. He's not a difference maker. He does a couple things serviceably well, and I think right now Deshaun Watson needs something to take the heat off him, and if that's throwing the ball, I don't think that takes the heat off him. I think Amari Cooper is a really, really good wide receiver, and David Njoku's a really, really good tight end. I don't know how far at this stage DeAndre Watson can elevate those guys. Can he put Njoku in the top 5? Can he make Cooper a wide receiver 1 while this running game comes back? The offensive line is getting old and starting to have some turnover. I'm hesitant to bet on Deshaun Watson, but like all players, I think there's a price for everyone. I'm still trying to determine. I think I'm probably not in on Watson until we're around the QB 10 to 14.
Man, I might even have to go lower before I took him. He had 2 6-game stretches in each of his seasons, and his stats in both are eerily similar. Coming off of that huge layoff, where he was held out of the 2021 season, suspended for the first 11 games of 2022. We expected some rust. He threw it 170 times, only completed 58% of his passes, 1102 in yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But then rolling into 2023, coming off of a full off season, all the time to learn, going in, he threw it 171 times, only completed 61% of his passes for 1115 yards, 1,115 yards, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. I mean, he was pretty well the same. And all those are marked drops. When he was in Houston, he had a career completion percentage of 67.8, but in his 3 kind of peak seasons, if you throw out the couple of starts he made as a rookie, 68.3% completion second year, 67.3 his third year, 70% in 2020, which was his 4th year. But on the flip side, he's not, it feels like he's been around forever. He's 28 right now, be 29 in September. He's not that old. He should be coming into what could potentially be a peak. And the Browns are kind of stuck with him owing to that long-term guaranteed money contract. So I guess you gotta kind of hope he bounces back. It is a question for me in fantasy. I think that they went and added a receiver. I liked what we were seeing from Elijah Moore, but with him and Jerry Jeudy, I don't know if either of them is going to be particularly playable. I would bet that they alternate and cannibalize each other. Amari Cooper is still who I would have as the wide receiver I want, but I am much more comfortable in the wide receiver 2 range than wide receiver 1 range. Njoku, that's going to be a little interesting to me as well, because David Njoku, I think, really did well after we had Watson come out. So Watson was the first 6 games. Njoku had a couple of decent games. He got 2 for 24, 4 for 48, 4 for 20, 6 for 46, 3 for 24, and 5 for 54, 0 touchdowns. After Watson came out, 4 for 77 and a touchdown the very next week, 4 for 26 and a touchdown, 6 for 58, 7 for 56 on 15 targets, 9 targets, finished 6 for 59, only 2 for 17 against the Rams. But then 8 targets, 6 for 91 and 2 touchdowns, 14 targets with Flacco, 10 for 104 and a touchdown, 9 targets, 6 for 44 and a touchdown. And his last game of the season with Flacco, 6 for 134 yards. He really exploded those 4 games with Joe Flacco, which was a big part of his finish. it's not that he wasn't in the offense when Deshaun Watson was there, but he had none of his touchdown catches there, and he had a couple games with 10 points, but a couple of games in the 4 and 5 point range. I think he was much more reliable performer afterward. What is their chemistry like? What is his chemistry like with other receivers? And I think you also bring up it before, you've been rock solid in one fantasy area with Cleveland, and that was running back. I wanted Nick Chubb. I wanted to put him in. Is he a little slow to come back? What is he going to look like? I doubt they're going to play him much in the preseason. So you're basically going to have to go with your gut. I mean, I'm still drafting him. I have him in a few dynasty leagues, and I'm really hoping he comes back. And if he comes back, that'll be great. But I'm still pretty bullish on Jerome Ford. He was involved in those 2 games, even when Nick Chubb was there running. And I think he is definitely going to have a role. I'm less set on Deonta Foreman. I don't know about you, but I feel like he's more of a hedge against Nick Chubb missing time.
Yeah, Foreman to me is a guy that I've just been pulling for him, and he seems to perform whenever he's given an opportunity. But man, they give him a bunch of carries, and then they're like, "See you later, thanks. Here's your sticker." And I'm like, man, why won't somebody just give him a chance to be the guy for a couple seasons? I think Ford has relevancy, even with Chubb there, just because they've always used a second back to the detriment of Nick Chubb's fantasy scoring. Kareem Hunt and Ford caught 44 passes last year, and the knock on Chubb is that he's not that good a pass catcher. And to that, I say he doesn't have to be that good. Just throw it to him out there. He's big and he's fast. You don't have to have him run routes. Just dump it off to him. But anyways, I digress into my whiny mode. I'm with you. I like Jerome Ford as, he's a 0 RB guy. He's somebody that, if I'm in Dynasty and the Nick Chubb owner is a little bit desperate, maybe I can get a premium by trading him away to that manager.
I have to correct myself on. I forgot Watson didn't play the first 6 and get knocked out. He played 3, got knocked out, and came back. So David Njoku's highest targeted game, week 10, was with Watson. He still never caught a touchdown from Watson, but he did have 15 targets, 7 for 56, and then 9 targets, 6 for 58 in weeks 9 and 10 with Watson. So maybe that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah. I mean, Njoku's good. The Browns love him. They've signed him to 2 extensions?
Mm.
And so they want him around. He's a good blocker, so he'll be on the field. And he's a great athlete, 6'4", 260 pounds, can jump. He's got okay hands. But if Deshaun Watson realizes that, hey, this guy's good for me, and he becomes the number 2 guy, and they're not trying to make it Elijah Moore or Jerry Jeudy. My fear is that they're going to try to make Jerry Jeudy the number 2 receiver.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy's like the fetch of professional football. Stop trying to make him a thing. He's not
right
a
on.
thing.
Right on. I'm with you, bro.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed too because I liked what they were doing with Elijah Moore, especially later in the season, getting mixed in. I just don't. I've seen a lot of people are super high on Jerry Jeudy, and if you looked at the early fantasy apps, some of the app projections for Jeudy in week 1 is him having like 11 or 12 points. That just feels overly optimistic to me. And if that does become the case, then you're right. It probably comes at the expense of Njoku, because I fundamentally don't really think that the Browns end up becoming this kind of team that wants to throw a whole ton. I know with Flacco there, at the end of the season, they did end up throwing quite a bit because he had he only had 204 attempts in 5 games. So it's not like he had a lot of yards and touchdowns, but it's not like they had a ton, But Watson in 6 games, only 171 targets. Dorian Thompson-Robinson played in parts of, he started 3 and played in parts of several others, only 112 attempts. PJ Walker had 2 starts, played in a couple of other games, had 111 attempts. So we'll see how many passes are out there, and if I'm in fantasy in among, I feel good about Amari Cooper, and I am still taking a shot on Njoku. I think he'll ultimately end up as a tight end 1, maybe not top half, but I think he'll be in there. But the draft capital is what bothers me the most about Judy, and because Jerry Judy's ADP right now, well, I guess now he's down to wide receiver 61. That seems more realistic.
Because that's what, wide receiver 5?
Yeah, that'd be wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6 territory. Let's see, Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore, come on, load. That seems interesting given some of the expectations. Elijah Moore's ADP is wide receiver 94. I actually don't mind that at all. Where would you take Nick Chubb, since we essentially probably won't? Njoku's going tight end 11, which feels pretty good.
Yeah, that feels like close to being a bargain for Nick Chubb or for David Njoku.
Chubb is going currently as running back 46 in PPR, which feels like a pretty exceptional value.
It feels like a great value. I feel like that's going to go up. I feel like he'll be top 30 by the time redraft season is in full swing. In Dynasty right now, you add in his age coming off the injury. So I think a lot of the ADP right now is influenced by Dynasty managers. So I think that pushes Chubb down. Once we're in redraft season, I think that he'll move up around into the wide receiver 3, maybe even push for running back 2, low end running back 2, just because people believe in him. And so I think if I'm getting him now at running back 46, that feels good.
Yeah, but as you said, we haven't really hit the crux of redraft season. I was just curious. Jerome Ford only going as running back 36, so maybe people are just kind of staying away from Cleveland right now. 36 feels like a decent slot for him. Watson is going currently as quarterback 20, which I'm okay with that value. I think he'll be in the quarterback 2 range if he stays healthy.
Yeah, I think that's we look at what he gave us in Houston, and so I think it's easy to say that's got to still be in there somewhere. So if I'm getting him at quarterback 2, if he's my quarterback 2 in Superflex, and I get him at quarterback 20, and he's got the potential to be quarterback 10 or 12, that's a huge win.
So Watson's scores, he has one real grim score where he got injured early and finished with negative 0.8. So I'm going to throw that out. But he had 21.7, then 12.6, 21.2, 19, and 17.2. So if you divided that over 5 games, he averaged 18.34 points a game. Anthony Richardson also, and Justin Fields, Patrick Mahomes all averaged 18.4 points per game. last year, and that would be 12th in points per game. So potentially, the way he was tracking in games he started and finished is better than I remembered.
Well, there's room for optimism.
Maybe. So I mentioned I have this division entirely over 500. Where do you have the Browns finishing?
So I have them at 10-7. Actually, I finished my quick and dirty one loss, and so I've got the Bengals winning the division at 11-6, and both the Ravens and the Browns finishing 10-7 and missing the playoffs, with the Steelers, not being over 500.
So I do have the Steelers right at 9 wins again because somehow Mike Tomlin sprinkles fairy dust on whatever he has. But I had the Browns right in the 9-10 win range, just missing on the playoffs as well. What do you think that would do to Kevin Stefanski? Because last year, he was in the – I don't remember. I don't think he won Coach of the Year.
I don't think he did. Oddly enough, I have all 4 teams going 3-3 in division. I must have picked home games for almost all of them.
He did finish as the AP Coach of the Year last year. Okay.
So to me, I think if they win 10 games and miss the playoffs this year, I think he's safe. I think it's just, it's just one of those things where some teams just finish a little bit better. Like I have the Jags finishing as the 7th playoff team with a 10-7 record. So it's there's a couple teams with 10-7 records missing the playoffs because of tiebreakers in my mock standings here.
Well, I think the AFC is going to be incredibly competitive.
Yeah.
Outside of the West.
Right.
Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back on Friday, provided neither of us blows ourselves up on Thursday.
I'm not blowing myself up, man.
Yeah,
you're lucky if I even light a sparkler.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking forward to being off and watching Jaws and trying to see if the hot dog eating contest is worth watching with no Joey Chestnut.
You wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I have no interest in hot dog eating contests.
My wife doesn't either. Every year that I put it on, she sends a death stare my way. I'm sure that'll be the case this year too. I don't know. It's fascinating,
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, if you are going to take a pass on the hot dog eating contest like Dennis, what can the people do to fill that time?
They can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, leave us a comment, follow us on the social media at Roundtable FF on the old Twitter machine. We'll have to get our Facebook page back. I think that was created by a former co-host, and maybe we'll have to just create a new one. I don't even know if I don't think we have a TikTok or an Instagram, but
No. I've never even been on TikTok.
My wife is.
My wife likes it. I know. Life's too short for me.
Right.
Which is ironic because those videos are short, but it's too short. Not
700 of them in a row.
On Friday, we'll be looking at the Steelers and the Bengals. We will, I think, we will have a special guest, another member of our league, should be on with us to talk Steelers and Bengals as we finish the AFC North. After that, we have a couple more divisions. We're about at the halfway mark of divisions, and then we will go into redraft rankings because you know what? Redraft season is coming. Speaking of which, if you would like to play with us on a one season basis, feel free to reach out to Dennis or I on Twitter or to the show handle at is it FF Roundtable or Roundtable FF? I always mess it up.
Roundtable FF.
Roundtable FF. You can follow us on Twitter. Reach out and let us know. We still have a couple of spots open. Last year, Dennis's lovely wife won the league. She will be back trying to defend her title. And the honor of the Bennett household. Dennis and I will be in there as well.
Do you know what carried her to the title? Do you remember? She picked up Zamir White.
Oh yeah, that's right. I just did my one of my sleeper articles on Zamir White. I mean, he had an incredible. He was running back 9 over the last 4 weeks when he was a starter. That was a rock solid addition. Meanwhile, I feel like my team overcame obstacles. I renamed my team Chubb's Broken Wheel because Chubb was my first round draft pick, and I had him for a game and a half. So I was pretty happy I advanced.
Yeah,
If we're
I
being
didn't make
honest.
the playoffs.
So, well, there's always this year. So if you would like to join in, we will be doing a live draft in over Labor Day weekend. So that'll be a good chance to get a draft going. My wife is out of town, so that worked out really well.
My
for me.
wife will be in the draft.
Yep. See, look, we've both made our plans for how to make this work. But that'll do it for us today. Hope you guys have a safe and happy 4th of July. Remember, let a neighbor light the fuse. Until then, we'll see you on Friday.
Bang, bang.